Welcome to Little Black Dots, episode number 3, with me, Jonathan Andrew Rysdon, and Jonathan Music. I usually start this thing with something that I've written down and rehearsed a few times, but I decided today that I'm just going to kind of talk to you about something I think I know pretty well. The music industry, as an artist, the music industry can oftentimes be kind of difficult to navigate. And if you're an artist and you want to produce your own music, or you especially want to have someone produce your music because you spend too much time writing music, how do you go about doing that? You're going to come across a lot of people on this path, on your path to success, because ultimately that's what's going to happen. If you keep working at it, you're going to get it. But along the way, you're going to come across a lot of different types of people, all with different motivations, ulterior motives. Some of them want to be the star of the show. Some of them are visionaries, and they only have room for their ideas. There's a lot of folks out there, many of whom have promises and will promise you things. And oftentimes those promises you'll find are empty. But don't give up, okay? Do not give up there. Keep trying, keep writing, keep persevering, because along that path you will also come across, if you look, if you seek, you will find there are servant leaders in the industry. Those who want to see you shine, those who want to see you reach your goals, those who want to help you achieve your vision. So before I go on any further, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. I'd like to introduce you to somebody who is one such person who spends a lot of their time in the background and bringing the artists to the foreground. So without any further delay, I would like to share with you a sample from the Innovaniac music catalog. This tune is called Hell Yeah, This Is How I Ride a Horse. I'm very excited to find out how they ride a horse. And just like that, the music sample is over. The show must go on. Kevin.
Hey, Jonathan, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing great, man. I'm trying
So
to figure out how to do some technology. I think we're good.
Yeah, I'm still struggling with that right now, but it's pretty incredible that we can do that. We can share our phones and talk to each other. I'm talking to you from Ohio. Where are you at right now?
Yeah, the funniest thing here in Seattle, Washington, funniest thing is that we're good friends at this point, and I've known you now for like 9-10 months, talk all the time, but I still think it's funny that we've never actually met each other.
Yeah, I think this is probably the most FaceTime that we've had.
Yeah,
Interestingly enough.
I love it though, man. Actually, most of the people that I meet in the music business right now, and a lot of the collaborators that I've been working with, they're all over the world, which I never would have expected even 10 years ago. I never would have thought that I'd be doing this and working with people from Europe and Africa and even the Middle East and Cincinnati of all places. So it's pretty cool. We're
Wow.
pretty blessed, actually.
So you're working internationally.
Yeah, I mean, once in a while, I've found a couple of collaborators. There's a Scottish lady that I make music with pretty frequently. There's an English guy that I make music with pretty frequently. I'll drop some names in a little bit, but even an accordion player from Jordan, and it's all because of the internet, and it's all because of things like what we're doing right now and social media. Actually, it's kind of funny because I often hear musicians kind of bashing social media and bashing, streaming channels, Spotify and things like that. But the truth is, for someone like me, these things are all a huge blessing because they allow connections where it never would have been possible before.
Well, that's great, and they're probably better off having met you. I can I can say a lot about that, but I'm gonna refrain from that just yet, because I have to salute to you because I know you're a fellow coffee drinker. We talk about that all the time. I always have my cup of coffee here, and it's and my new a little bit of stained. It's my new beginnings cup. Yeah.
That
So
coffee mug is just like a good song. It's got a couple of imperfections on it, and that makes it beautiful. You know what I mean?
yeah, well, whoever designed this cup, I love this cup. It's one of my favorite cups. Whoever designed the cup, the diameter is not a circle. It's kind of, misshapen, so you can't help but to spill the coffee out while you drink it. Anyhow,
Evil.
but
Evil. You have to drink out of the corner, my friend.
oh,
But when you're in Seattle, I got to tell you, you get to be an expert with drinking coffee. You figure out all the tricks. The way it starts is that you have, what do they call it? You have a frappuccino, right? And then you're like, oh, this tastes like ice cream. And then they move you on to like a mocha latte, and whipped cream's all over it, and you still think it tastes pretty good. And then you eventually get to coffee with some flavor in it. And then eventually you're just drinking espresso. It's kind of how it works out
so
here.
you're moving in reverse. Sounds like.
Right. Right. I've whittled myself down to 3 or 4 cups of coffee a day at this point.
Wow. What did you used to drink?
Actually, I used to be a manager at a Starbucks. And the truth is that you, if you ever go into a Starbucks, you'll notice the employees always seem really happy, really chipper. And the reason why is because they are high. They're very caffeinated. And I don't blame them. You wake up at 3 in the morning to go pour coffee for people. You kind of need that. But you're working around an espresso machine all day, and they kind of encourage you to be on top of what the different drinks taste like. And there you go. Suddenly you're running around with a big smile all the time.
Wow. It almost kind of sounds miserable.
I don't know. I like the experience. I'm glad that I had it, even though it was pretty short-lived.
Yeah. Well, so, okay. I mean, we could easily talk about coffee all day long. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, and do and consume. My wife knows that. I mean, our coffee bill is ridiculous. But anyhow, we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you, and we want to get to know you a little better. So why don't you take us to the beginning, and let's kind of navigate where things started for you.
Sure. I mean, I started off in Baltimore, actually, on the East Coast, and but I only lived there until before I can remember. I think when I was 2 or 3, then my family moved out to Colorado, and I grew up there, and I lived there for 30 years, kind of Denver area, and lots of friends and family still out there. It was a great place to grow up, man. And I was very, very lucky. I grew up. Well, I would say my family wasn't really into music. Didn't have any musicians in the family really, but grew up going to schools where I was just surrounded by amazing musicians. And so kind of my whole life, my whole time growing up and going to school, I just got really blessed by playing with great bass players and great guitarists and jazz bands and all kinds of stuff. And it, gave me plenty of encouragement to become a musician myself. So that's kind of how it happened. I lived in Colorado for, like I said, about 30 years. And then little by little, my family started moving out to Seattle. And I came out to visit a few times, kind of fell in love with it. It was green and beautiful and lush. Just a really cool city. Can't really describe it in the right words, but I just kind of fell in love with it. Decided I wanted to live here in Seattle, so found a way to move here. And I've been here ever since. I did spend a couple of years in Boston in the meantime. But yeah, I've pretty much been in Seattle since 2001. And this is my home now, so can't see me moving away anytime soon.
Growing up in Colorado, did you have and do you have any siblings?
Oh yeah, yeah. I have. Well, I have a big step family actually. So when I was really little, it was just my brother and I. My parents got divorced and remarried, and then I inherited three stepbrothers and a stepsister. So I ended up with a really big family. And looking back, now I can say actually that's kind of a normal situation. At the time, I'm not sure if I felt like that, but um, all of my brothers and my sister were kind of very close in age to me. So we ended up being great buddies, actually. And even still to this day, really great friends with all my siblings. I kind of embraced it. I kind of felt excited about inheriting a bunch of new brothers and sisters, and I don't know, it was pretty cool. So I ended up growing up sharing a bedroom and stuff like that with brothers, but still loved it quite a bit.
Were there any challenges for you and your sibling, kind of adjusting to these new people in your home, or were you in their home?
Yeah, it's when you start having step families, then you find out that you're suddenly sharing all your stuff. They're suddenly sharing all their stuff with you, and of course, there's some adjustment and things like that. But I mean, yeah, we all had times when we were fighting with each other, and most of us were boys too. So we got a little rough sometimes, but I would say for the most part, we just ended up really great friends and ended up being pretty cool actually. And we outnumbered our parents, big time. So kind of we're all cohorts and partners in crime growing up for the most part.
Who did you end up staying with? Did you stay with your dad or were you with your mom?
Mostly with my mom, and we had one of those kind of traditional things where you see your dad on every other weekend and a weeknight, and then spend summers over there and stuff like that. I tried to. I can't say I tried. My parents tried to split it up and make sure that we got a good time with both parents, but majority of the time with my mom and that side of the family.
So then you ended up being with your mom primarily, and I assume then the extended family came from your mother and her new relationship.
Yeah, both actually. Both of my parents got remarried, and I inherited two new siblings on each side, so a little bit of both.
Okay, wow. Wow. So you would move from one house to the next and you would have a completely new family at each home. That's
Yeah, it's kind of like that. I've always been a kind of an unusual person because I've always been super resilient, and I actually learned about that through going to therapy. So I know I didn't exactly know that about myself before, but I I seem to always be kind of positive in my outlook. I seem to always see the good things that are going on and to be excited about the future. And I think that applies here too. It's like, on the one hand, you could go, oh man, like, things are shaking up and I don't like the unfamiliar things that are happening. But on the other hand, it's like, sweet. I get to take my drum kit over to my dad's house this weekend and show off what I can play, and or Christmas would come around and go, oh man, just opened 10 gifts and now I get to go to dad's house and open 10 more, just silly little things like that. But I don't know. I always just kind of got excited about uh, the family, even the new family, the old family. Just, I don't know. I always kind of enjoyed that. So.
You mentioned going to therapy, and I think that's great, and I'm glad you did because I think some people they don't go there and they don't communicate that, and I know that it's very beneficial and it's a good opportunity to go and talk about yourself. Who doesn't want to do that? So when you were in therapy, was that is that a recent thing, or was that when you were a child? Were you going to therapy?
No, this was this is about 20 years ago, I'd say 20 some years ago, 25 years ago maybe. But getting getting myself through a very difficult relationship is why I started going actually, and kind of learning about myself through the process and um, learning how to. I was in a relationship with somebody who had a borderline personality disorder, and it was very intense. And I learned that I owned a lot, and it helped me to just kind of see things from a different perspective, see my own life from a different perspective, and my choices, and to realize that, just to realize how much of a future I had, really. I can't really capture everything in one or two sentences, but um, before I started that process, I didn't realize what, I never thought about mental health or anything like that. Um, but I've always been open to new things, and one of my parents had encouraged me and helped me to start going to see a therapist. And I said, all right, why not? I'll give it a try. So if, anybody who is struggling with anything in life, going through something very difficult, I think it's really helpful to have someone like that to talk to, and especially a professional, because, I think oftentimes people try to talk to somebody who's very close to them. And the problem is, when you're very close to the problem, or you're very close to the situation, it's hard to be objective. So I found, a therapist is able to not only have the training and background to understand what the client needs, and how to direct conversations and be impactful, but they're also not tied in so closely that they can't be objective about things. They can call you on your BS, for example. you know
So growing up in Colorado, you have this new life, these new people in your family. It sounds like mom and dad, the pairs of mom and dad, were supportive of your music. Well, what were they doing? What did mom and dad do growing up?
that's funny. You say they were supportive of the music. I'll talk about them too, but my parents wanted me to learn how to play the piano when I was a kid, and, and I wanted to play the drums. I wanted to be a drummer. I saw John Bonham play the drums. I wanted to be a drummer. We were walking down the street past a music shop. There's drums in the window, and I just stood there drooling over them and looking at them, and I eventually wore my parents out. My parents wanted me to learn how to read music, get trained how to play the piano, and have that as something in my back pocket, I think. There's a lot of good in that. There's a lot of good reasons to do that, but I was extremely passionate about a specific thing in music, and I eventually, I think, drove them to the point where they gave in and let me start playing the drums. The funny thing is about my parents, neither of them was really musical. Neither of them were kind of artistic or musical. Both of my parents were computer programmers. My dad was a doctor, actually. Before that, he worked at Johns Hopkins. He he mostly dealt with lab rats and studying reproductive systems and things like that, but eventually got into computer programming. And my mom was a computer programmer too. She was a teacher before that, but neither of them was musical. Neither of them had that kind of personality that I do. With it's like all art and no math, I guess I could say. It's all the creative side, basically.
Well, it's wonderful that you pursued the drums because you're a fantastic drummer. And anybody who has not listened to you play, who has not checked out your music, I think once they do, Kevin is predominantly drumming on most of those songs. So just a side note in there, a little reference point. Okay, so we're still in Colorado, and you're going to school. What was school like? Grade school, middle school, high school? Were you an athlete? Did you play in sports, or were you just straight up a musician going to band and doing things?
No, man, I was the tubby little kid, and I I loved sports and all that stuff. But honestly, all I really wanted to do was to play the drums. Pretty much growing up, and when I got old enough, I started to get a little band together, and we would play after school every day. Down in the basement to my house, and it was loud, it was fun, and it was all I cared about, really, for the most part. And that went on like my entire school career, pretty much from fourth or fifth grade until, you know, until the time I graduated and moved out. I can tell you one thing for sure, being a drummer, I probably had a new next door neighbor every couple of years growing up, you know, pretty loud stuff. But when you're the drummer, everyone comes to your house. So it all happened at my house, you know, all the time. I don't know how my family put up with it, to be honest with you.
Well, that's curious because if your parents weren't musical and you're not growing up necessarily in a musical environment, curious to know what led you there. You obviously had this profound love and this attachment to, or not attachment, but kind of possessed by the drums. So who were your musical influences? What led you there?
Well, at first, like I say, I I heard John Bonham, and that was one of the first influences that I had. And I've always liked rock music. And when I heard him playing, I don't remember exactly what it was. I think it was a concert video or concert footage or something like that. But the dude was just playing this see-through yellow Ludwig drum kit, and I have a song called "Artful Clobbering" that I wrote about the guy, and it's basically a big excuse to have a drum solo. But um, when I listen to a drummer like that, I feel there's so much power coming from it, and everything thrives because of it. All the other musicians in that band are incredible, and the songs are really well written. But it's just like you can't take him away from it because that's just the heart of it. So I think the power behind it, you know, the sense that you're kind of controlling time and rhythm, that just appealed to me a lot. And when I was really young, you know, before I really started playing, I had a friend in the neighborhood. He had a drum kit. I was super jealous, and I went over. His name was Sean Grismer. I went over to his house every chance I could and begged him to play a drum kit. You know, and I started clobbering on that thing, and you know, before long, I could play a few things. He taught me a couple of licks, you know, and I eventually started getting my own drums, and there you go.
So you have the drums at home and everyone's coming to your house, probably because the drum set's pretty large and not something that you can carry around easily. Did you start playing in clubs? Did you start gigging? Did you have a high school band? I mean, I guess you would have a high school band before playing in clubs, but I assume as the drummer, you're kind of, I mean, guitar players are a dime a dozen, you know, but drummers, finding a drummer is not always the easiest thing. But so there you are, the drummer. You must have been sought after.
It's kind of a very lucky thing. I mean, and you're right. The truth is, there's not a lot of drummers, and I think even these days, maybe less and less, because more and more people are finding out that they can, you know, use electronics and synthesizers and things like that to create drums. But you know, the truth is, there's not a lot of great drummers out there, and so that was that was definitely a blessing for me because there's definitely always opportunities to play in bands and things like that. I did the whole, you know, high school, you know, battle of the bands and having fun with it. After I got out of high school, then, you know, a couple of years later, I started getting into bands where we would tour, um, play a lot of nightclubs and you know, trying to make a thing of it, actually. But I probably did that for a good 10 years of my life, something like that, 10 or 12 years of my life, I would say, after graduating high school. I I went in a lot of unusual directions, I would say. I tried the traditional thing of going to college after high school. I did that for a year, and no, it just wasn't me. It was very obvious that just wasn't me. So, you know, shortly after that, I just started playing in bands and working a daytime gig and playing music at night. And it was really my life for a long time.
So what happened? Did you end up having to give that up? Did you meet
Here's what
someone?
happens. Here's what happens when you get into bands. You got a group of people. In my case, it was three dudes, and you know you're confined to a van for an extended period of time, or you know some kind of a vehicle, and you're sleeping on amplifiers, and you know, driving through snowstorms to get to gigs, and you know, it's a hell of a lot of fun. But it also, you know, being in close quarters with with a couple of guys after a while, I think, you know, we started to have some friction, and there came a point where the band just kind of fell apart after a while. But you know, I'm still really close with a lot of the people that I played with back then, and that band in particular. Still very close to one of the two guys that was in that band, and even recording music together to this day. So, you know, it's not like the friendships really fell apart, but I just think the band, the band thing ended up being a little bit too much with um, you know, and you're broke. Trust me, when you're playing and touring, you know, there's a couple places where you could go and sell T-shirts and you know, get a lot of people to come to your shows and stuff. But there's some times where a guy is paying you, hey, you know, here's $10 for gas, but that's it. Or, you know, we give you guys a couple of beers, but that's it. So it's also really tough. You know, it's really tough being on the road. It toughened me up a lot. I learned a lot. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But you know, I remember one of the guys in the band, I think, just decided I got to get a real job, and you know, I've got a girlfriend. We're probably going to get married, and you know, this living on the road thing, it's really, especially the more people that you have in your group, the more likely it is that it's going to fall apart. You know, to be honest. So you know, there came a point where I said, all right, maybe I need to, you know, grow up and you know, get a real job, and you know, I did that too. So, but here I am, back playing music and learning new things, producing and all that stuff.
So I'm doing the math in my head, and I think it sounds about like anywhere between 25 and 28 is kind of where you kind of stopped, I guess, playing with the bands and stopped being on the road and doing those sorts of things. And I find too that in the relationships that I've had in my life with other musicians, people growing up, that seems to be the dividing point where people who are so passionate about pursuing music, they stop. They have this epiphany and suddenly they say, oh, you know, it was just a hobby of mine. It was just something that I did, you know, and now they go to pursue like a real career or something that's real, quote in quotes. And I always found that was fascinating because music is very real and the pursuit of music is very real. And it always has been too, you know, historically, the people who were musicians in the past, they had prestigious roles and were, you know, part of courts for, you know, if you look at European history, the musicians, the chief musicians, they had roles like the doctors did and much like the lawyers did. And so this music science was a very much prestigious role. And so over the years, it's dwindled down, watered down. And now people look at it as sort of this just a thing to do, you know, out of high school. It's kind of for kids who are kind of edgy, you know, the artsy folks. And so it almost gets kind of put in this like childish place, you know, this little box where it's a childish pursuit. But you didn't stop there, did you? Because it doesn't sound like you did. You continued on.
Well, the funny thing is, I did kind of stop. I had a hiatus, and I think you really wrapped it up nicely the way you said that. I think it's kind of true. I thought I gotta maybe get more serious with life, and you know, I started pursuing a career, and you know, I stopped just having that ramen noodle diet, you know, which I'd done for 10 years, and you know, I started to be a career-minded individual, and music kind of took a sidestep for a chunk of time there, you know, and um, I did when I moved back to Seattle from Boston, you know, I got married, and you know, I have 3 kids now, and trust me, when the kids were younger, all I thought about was I got to make sure that I'm putting food on the table, and you know, that we have a house, and the kids are healthy and taken care of and happy. And you do kind of, you know, well, I kind of put music to the side for a chunk of time. You know, I didn't get back into it until 7 or 8 years ago, maybe, when my wife and I were actually going to a church. And one Sunday, my wife nudged me and she goes, "You should play the drums up there with the band at the church." And I was like, "No, I'm not going to do that." And she would say, "You know how much you miss it? You always talk about the old times playing in bands and how much you liked music, and like, just go do it." Eventually, she talked me into it, and I started. You know, I went and talked to the director, and within a couple of weeks, I did a interview, a drum playing interview, I guess you could call it that. And then, within a few weeks, I was actually up there playing again. I had forgotten how much I loved it, although it was a pretty big difference from the rock, dive bar rock music, scene to playing in a church band on Sunday morning. It's a whole different experience, but it's still kind of the same too. It's getting behind the drum kit and playing with a group of people and connecting over music. And then I was starting to realize how much I missed it. And then I got the itch, and I started to figure out how I could get back into it. And ever since then, it's just been building and building.
So getting back into it, clearly you're not, playing in bars anymore, and you're not traveling, and you're not doing those sort of things. So it looks like getting back into it for you is slightly different than it was before. So how did you get back into it? Obviously, through the church, you started playing again, and you kind of rekindled this love that was always there. But how did it start to change, and how did it start to take the shape that it is now?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of an evolution in a way. Like I mentioned, I have 3 kids, and I was realizing that for me to play music, I had to do it at night. I had to do it when the kids were in bed. And that's kind of how it started, actually. I thought to myself, I got a bunch of friends who are recording music and putting it online. These guys have YouTube channels, and I'm like, I could do that. Why not? I could learn how to do that. So I got a little audio box with a couple of plugins and a free version of a DAW, and I was like, all right, I'm going to learn how to do this. And I had to watch about 1 million YouTube videos to get started. But eventually I was recording little songs, and I thought, well, I could do this. And the years go by, and you learn more and more, and you figure out, wow, I'm actually getting some pretty good quality sounds out of this thing at this point. And eventually you go, I wonder if I could produce a song that was good enough quality to actually publish it, like a pro quality song. I kind of equate it to maybe like how a tattoo artist gets started. I've heard, I don't really know, but I've heard that they start on themselves. You practice because you don't want to mess up a tattoo for a client, and you practice, and then you get to a point where you feel pretty competent and confident, and then you start to go, all right, maybe I could do this for someone else. The funny thing is, I didn't realize, but I was kind of learning how to be a producer and a mixing engineer. And through that process, I learned that's really where my passion was, much more than playing music. I had learned guitar and bass and very little bit of keyboards through the years growing up, but I thought I could write songs and record them, and I did that for a while. But when I started producing music for other people, a whole new world of like excitement opened up for me, and that that's what's been driving me ever since. Actually, I still create my own music once in a while, but collaborating with other people and producing other people's music is really where my heart is right now, and it's just what I love doing the most. I never would have seen that coming 5, 6 years ago.
And that's interesting that you say that because, as a musician, I'll speak for myself. A lot of times, I kind of fit into that little mold that I was referring to in my opening. You kind of focused on your own ambition, and your own vision, and creating what it is that you hear in your mind. But sounds like that's not your goal. It sounds like you want to do something different, and it sounds like you want to help folks to achieve that sort of thing. So is this what started you moving in the direction of creating your own music label?
Yeah, you mentioned something in the very beginning which I really resonated with, which was, I like to be the person behind the scenes. Even doing this, like a podcast or an interview, to me, it's like a little bit uncomfortable because I always like supporting other people. I like when other people are in the spotlight, but I know that I was a little part of maybe helping them to get there. To me, that is like the most satisfying thing. And I'm comfortable talking, and I've played on 100 different stages, but that's really what I enjoy the most. It's what I get the most satisfaction out of. And I don't think I really knew that until I started learning how to produce music. And it's funny because most musicians that I've met, they know how to write songs or play an instrument, and they know a little bit about maybe recording, but the business side of the business, and like, how do I take this song that I've written and what do I do with it? How do I publish it? How do I copyright it? Blah, blah, blah. The business of the business. I started realizing as I was learning that stuff for myself, then I could actually give that to other people, to musicians and artists. And the company that I created, Innovaniac Music, that's the whole point to the company, is to find out what is the one or two things that are holding you back as an artist, whoever you are, and I can help you. You know, if it's collaborating on a song, maybe you need a drummer, for goodness sake, or maybe you've got a song, you just need it recorded, or maybe you need a mixing engineer, or maybe you don't know how to do promotion, or any number of things. I'm finally getting to a point now where I've done a lot of that stuff for myself, and I kind of know how to achieve those things, and it's like I can help you too. I can help you finish that project. So that's kind of what I aspire to do. And when somebody publishes something, and I know that I was just a little part of helping them to get it published, oh man, it's the best feeling in the world. That's bar none. That's my favorite thing.
What has been your biggest challenge in this, since you've established Innovaniac Music? What has been, in working with other people, what has been your biggest challenge, and how did you overcome that?
Wow. Honestly, at this point, the biggest challenge is just time. Like I mentioned, I mean, I've got a family. I still have a full-time gig. I'm starting to have clients, and I'm starting to have a small income from this work. But this work, I founded this company mostly to help people, and the goal was never really to make a lot of money doing it. And so, I still work a day job, and I love my job. I think it's fun what I do, but the music production business takes a lot of time. And on the one hand, I've learned how to be very efficient, but on the other hand, I still get a lot of my work done after the family's in bed. I pound a lot of caffeine, and I stay up 2 or 3 hours later than everybody, and sit in front of my computer and record music and mix music. So I'd say that's the answer, and I really haven't solved it yet. I have a vision. There's a dream I have. Maybe one day when I'm a little older and getting toward retirement, maybe I can spend 8 hours a day doing music. Oh my goodness, that would be something. I would also say, another way to answer the question would be the learning curve. The learning curve is pretty huge. When you first get started, you think, oh, I could just record it. And, multi-track. I can record a bass, I can record a guitar, I can record some drums. Should be perfect. And you have to go through a massive learning curve with understanding all the different elements that go into sound. Why does it sound great in my headphones, but then I get in my car and it sounds like dirt? Little things like that. Or, understanding panning and 3D audio and EQ, and what is a noise gate and what's compression. When you first get started, you don't have any idea that you're going to be learning all this stuff as you go. So I think for myself, I still have a big learning curve ahead of me too. And it's a little bit intimidating, but I'm also excited about it.
So you're a father, you're a husband, you're a professional, how do you stay motivated? I mean, I think you already mentioned your cups of coffee. I think we've already talked about coffee, but that's not enough, you know, because there's a lot of people that are out there and they just say, you know, I don't have time to work on my passion projects. And you know, you mentioned earlier your wife being supportive of you. I think that's huge if you have a partner in your life that's supportive of you. Because I mean, if you don't have that, then you know you're married. I'm married. Even if you're not married, I just assume because I'm married and you're married, we have that in common, that people would understand that if you don't have that kind of support, you know, you have other things you need to do. You've got kids, they have their needs, and their needs have needs. You know, they have their lives, your wife has her life, you know, and then after you've done all of these things, if you're doing it right, there's this very small sliver that's left for you. And you can go and watch Netflix. You can go and, you know, play video games, for crying out loud. You can do a whole bunch of other things. You can go to sleep, you know. But instead, it sounds like you grind even further. So how do you stay motivated?
It's that same thing from when I was 6 or 7 years old and I first found out who John Bonham was. It's the same exact thing. I just have to do it. I mean, I think all the musicians and artists that may hear this, they would understand. You get a motivation, you get a creative idea, you get, for example, for me, I'll be thinking about a song that I'm maybe mixing for somebody, and an idea will just snap, you know, and I'll go, oh, I have to work on this right now. I have to go and complete this. It's almost compulsive, and you know, you just never feel satisfied until you've put it together, and then you know you listen back to it, and sometimes you go, oh man, that was terrible. What was I thinking? But you know, sometimes you go, oh yes, like that was perfect, and then, oh man, that keeps me going. You know, I mean, it's just exciting. I have you know, have various projects going on, and I cannot wait to finish them. You know, I can't wait to hear how the different artists that I'm working with are going to receive them, you know, and hopefully be excited about them. I've had a couple of people tell me funny things, you know. I hope this isn't too crass. You know, one of the best compliments I got early on and with one of my very first clients was I sent him a WAV file, kind of a rough mix of a song that he had asked me to produce. And I didn't hear from him for a day or two, and then he texted me and he goes, dude, this just gave me a music boner. And I was like, whoa. But honestly, like, I mean, what a compliment. And then, you know, there's been a couple other times where I was able to produce a song for somebody. I'm thinking of one in particular. I don't want to embarrass him, so I'm not going to say his name, but, you know, he had kind of limited means and, you know, but beautiful music. And I helped him produce a song, and I don't think he would have been able to get it published otherwise. And he was so he was just so ecstatic about it, and I was too. The finished product ended up so great, and I just know that it meant the world to him. And I don't know, little things like that just keep me motivated, keep driving me. There's probably more to it than just that.
That's a good answer. Lots of thoughts I have right now, but I don't want to deviate too far from our conversation. And so I'm curious to know, with all things said and considered, how do you see Innovaniac music evolving? How do you see yourself evolving and changing in the future musically?
I think that's a good question. You know, for the last year, I've mostly been focused on a lot of collaboration. I have a few clients that I'm strictly producing their music, and I could see, you know, maybe in the next year or two, I will always keep doing collaborations, but I think maybe in the next year or two, I may limit those a little bit more and focus a little bit more on taking on more variety of client projects. And, you know, because I've gotten to the point where I've got a pretty decent portfolio of music where if somebody wants to hear my work, it's really easy to pull from a few hours of music to show them how my production sounds. So, you know, I'd really like to first of all, I really like to do more production work for other people's music. And I think the other thing I'm interested in is sync licensing, and trying to find ways to get music into film, you know, or maybe for commercial purposes, but probably for film mostly. I'm super excited about the idea of short films, maybe animated films and things like that, and producing the music for those. And I could see myself getting into that too.
Okay, well, I want to share this. It kind of is in line with one of the questions. I hope they're still on. If not, that's okay. Um, he says in the comments here, I'm so far removed from the latest equipment, I'd have to learn a lot. And it sounds like that's a barrier that prevents this person from pursuing any further. So with that in mind, my question to you is, what advice would you give artists who are just starting, or some who have just kind of reached, a dead end or
Yeah.
some stance?
Yeah, it's so true. I always feel jealous. I have a handful of social media connections who are students at music schools, and Berkeley, or anyway, different music schools. And I'm like, oh man, you're learning how to be a producer by a professor. Like, wow, you know, um, you're going to get the full experience. But I never had that, and I think a lot of us never had that. And you go, how do I like figure this out on my own? And I'll be the first person to admit I use a lot of YouTube videos to learn things. There's some really bad advice out there and some really good advice. And so for me, it's a lot of trial and error, and I made a lot of mistakes. I've bought a lot of the wrong equipment. I've just destroyed files accidentally, you know. But I think it's like I said, you work on yourself first. You work on your own thing first, just like that tattoo artist. And don't be afraid to break things. And eventually you figure out what this button does and what that knob does. And I've also learned a lot of forums that I'm a part of, or social media groups, or producers, and they talk a lot about plugins and effects and all these different things that you can use to make music sound great, and AI technology and all this stuff. And I've kind of figured out that you don't even really need all that stuff, for the most part. You need a good EQ, you need good compression, you need good reverb, maybe a couple other little things, but I think the best music has very limited technology, actually. It's really more about your ear and producing a song that sounds right to you, So the technology is becoming less important, I'm learning, actually.
Kind of going back to basics, I think that's an interesting point that you bring up, because with all of the advances that we do have in technology, and some of these younger players and younger producers, I think they seek those things out and they use those, and they do a great job, but it kind of takes us a little further away from the actual musicianship behind the craft. And that's a whole nother conversation, but it's just the thing that kind of came to my mind, because it's true with production as well. I remember there was a time where, even probably obviously predates me, but you get a group of musicians into a large room, somewhat soundproofed, and you'd have them all get ready. They'd have their music in front of them. You'd have a conductor or somebody, a producer, and would tell everybody quiet on the set. Everyone would get quiet, and then they have the tape deck, and they would count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or in time, probably count the meter, of course. That's the timing of the song, 4 count, etc. And then they would press record and play, and you'd be limited to the quality of musicianship, which is something now that you can manufacture, which is bizarre. That's another conversation.
Maybe.
Um,
Maybe.
okay, fair enough. But they had the room, they had those things, and that's like your EQ, like your compression or your reverb. I mean, a reverb. Those were the things that were available based off of the environment and the acoustics that they were using. So they're very limited in what they could do with their production, but still able to produce great quality. And we still have some of those today to listen to, whether or not people want to. Motown is something that comes to my mind when I think about Motown and their recordings. I mean, they had very limited in terms of the technology that we have today, but just amazing, amazing production. And yeah, so, but this is your world of production. You could probably speak to that a lot more than I could. So where are you at today now? Like, what are you working on, and how do people connect with you, Kevin?
Well, the best way to connect with me is probably through my website or through one of my social media channels. Innovaniacmusic.com is my website, INNOVANIAC music. And that's my company, and that's definitely a place where you can connect with me, and you can kind of hear a sample of my work there. But I'm on, I always joke about it. Maybe I shouldn't, but I'm an old dude, but I'm still on most of the social media. You know, if you're on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever, you can find me on all those channels too. And you know, I love to connect with people that way, and you know, share music, share stories, you know, get critical feedback, and just network and meet people. So many cool people out there, man.
Well, that's great. We'll make sure that when we put this video out, we'll leave those connection points, Instagram channels, LinkedIn, etc., so that people can connect with you. This is my favorite part of the show. You know, Jonathan Music is something that is a passion project of mine, and oftentimes it's just, you know, you see me if you're familiar with Jonathan Music, but the truth is, my wife, she is she's the star of the show, and in a lot of ways, much like you are kind of behind the scenes. My wife is behind the scenes of Jonathan Music, and I always have her come at the end of these productions to kind of share her thoughts and give some background as to what's going on. And if she has any questions, I've just invited her into the conversation. I know we're having some issues with the boys. We're on dad time right now. Up there with the kids. So I sent her an invite, and she may or may not join today. Hopefully she will. Let's send her the invite, and see if she pops up. If not, we'll just carry through.
I got to tell you, man. Yeah, there she is.
I'm joining way too close and in the kitchen because this is usually where I spend most of my time. Hi, everyone. That was such a great interview. I feel like I'm way too close too, and the lighting's really bad in here. But anyway, so I really enjoyed the interview tonight. Kevin, nice to formally meet you virtually here. Grant, back in your room, please, for just 1 second. Oh my gosh, it's been a struggle bus. But yeah, I think that was a great interview. I loved hearing that you both have in common actually being in a band together in church. I think that's awesome. I put it in the comments too, how incredible that you both were in church bands. It's cool to see how like humble beginnings kind of connect you into the next phase of life, and just how I feel like we're led to where we're supposed to be. So it's really interesting to see how, you know, Kevin, you weren't really planning on, you know, doing the music thing, but kind of getting involved and in music, and then kind of leading into this new space that you're in where you're producing, and how your journey has kind of come along in due season and due time. So it's really interesting to see how the journey kind of comes together. Really, really good interview. I loved Grant, please stop. I'm like, I've been tested all day today as a mom, so I'm like, but anyway, so I have some quick announcements for Jonathan Music in partnership with Innovaniac. So this is our 4-year-old. He has a death wish right now.
That is the best. I love that so much.
Okay, so tonight, well, actually on February 3rd, I don't even know what today's date is actually, but Contact, your third, I believe it's the third EP that you all have released together. Is that correct? Yeah. I'm going from memory right now, mom brain. But the third EP, oh my gosh, this has been, for those of you who are out there watching, this music that Jonathan has been producing lately, and well, not producing, but creating in partnership with Innovaniac, Kevin, who's here right now, it has just been incredible. I keep telling him his musicianship is just going from new levels, right, to new levels through your partnership together. And I'm just really, really impressed. I was listening to it on repeat all morning today so that I wouldn't lose my mind. So for moms out there who need good music to keep you calm and loving your children, this EP is exactly what you should be listening to. The music is just so well done. I love the storyline behind how the music has come together, but the storyline from your side of you two partnering together and going back and forth while you're being great dads and husbands, but also the storyline in the music, right? So it's like this, I love a good story, being a comms professional. Grant, I'm not kidding. Stop it. Sorry. I'm so sorry. He always pulls me out of character. But yeah, so I would say, you know, I love the storyline behind this music, and I love how I'm on a journey with you right now. I'm truly on a journey. You know, first there's, you know, the visitors, right? That was the first one, right? I'm going from memory. What was the first one?
Intergalactic Kaleidoscope.
Intergalactic Kaleidoscope. Thank you. So it's like this space alternate universe reality experience, and then it sets the stage for us to get into visitors, where now, you know, there are visitors from, are you the visitors? That's why you all have to listen to the music, right? Are you two the visitors that are coming to this new land, or is it the visitors coming to your land? I don't know, but listen to the song, listen to the music, and then now we've made contact, right? So I feel like I'm truly on a journey. Like there's a storyline behind this. So anyway, I'm just loving what you two are doing. But for those of you out there who aren't familiar with what they're actually doing and what I'm speaking of, their third EP was released on the 3rd, which I think today's the 3rd. Is today the 3rd? Okay, good. I can't remember what day it is. But the 3rd EP was released today, which is Contact. They've officially made contact. And now you have to listen to the music to find out what that means. So you can get the Contact EP on all streaming platforms. My personal favorite is Spotify, which is where I was listening this morning. So go and stream that. It's Contact by Innovaniac Music. Jonathan, I believe it's actually written Jonathan Andrew Rysdon, and Kevin, I can't pronounce your last name, Kevin Ozias.
Well, I'm not going to help you now because that was fun.
My turn to talk. My turn to talk.
Stop, please. I'm sorry.
Listen.
So
That's okay.
you can get.
Okay, look up Jonathan Andrew Rice and you'll find it.
Thank you. So definitely go on Spotify. That's where I would stream it. And then if you want a little sneak peek before you actually listen to the EP, you can check out Jonathan Music on YouTube tonight at 9 p.m. where he will release a video drop, which is one of the songs from that EP. So definitely go and check that out, and pray for me so that I don't mom life, you all, mom life, I promise.
Clear about support, Kevin, about having our spouses. Like I couldn't have picked a worse time to do this. My wife to join. Rambunctious little boy for a while, so she still shows up. So I just wanted to thank her for that. And
yeah,
I gotta tell you, man, this is the best interview I've ever done. It's the first one too, but I'm still sure if I do 100 more, this will be the best one.
Thank you. I'll take it. And you know what? I just want to finish with some closing thoughts here. You're like, more closing thoughts. Truly, you two are doing some great work. I mean, this music is fantastic. I'm really, really impressed with the synergy that you have between one another and how you've come together on this music. Honestly, it's a masterpiece. So for those of you who are just listening to this interview and you're like, what is she talking about? I struggle a little bit. Like the teachers told my mom when I was in kindergarten that I had ADD, and my mom said, no, she doesn't. She's just bored. And I really think you should have listened to the teacher. Because I struggle sometimes with focus, and this music gets me in the zone. Right now I'm in my kitchen. I run a home bakery business, and I have tons to focus on at all times. Sometimes I just blast this whole, like from intergalactic kaleidoscope to now Contact. Sometimes I just blast it in my headphones to like drown out the noise and keep my peace. And this music is just very well done. So if you need productivity, you know, like back in the day, you could like listen to productivity music on YouTube and it would share like different cartoon videos. This is like that for me personally, just being able to tune in, listen to it and just kind of get things done. It's really great because I think we live in a day and age where everybody needs vocals in order to jam to something. But I think being able to listen to something without any sort of lyrical like vocals, but still has a storyline, it really keeps the imagination going. So just want to plug that as well. I think I'm able to be really creative while I'm listening to this on my own. So I need to go now because pray for him now. Pray for him now. But thank you all. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job, and thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot.
Nice.
That's why this is my favorite part.
Wake up.
So hey, that's, if you think that's crazy, you haven't seen the half of it here at my house. Yeah, good talk. I strongly suggest that anybody that's on here connect with you, and if anybody has any projects, definitely connect with you, because you can take something that's great and polish it out and make it even better. And I've worked with quite a few people at this point, and I feel very confident saying that the quality, your product is magnificent. Not only magnificent, there's something earthy about it too that makes it, I don't know. I think we kind of tried to get perfection a lot out of the music that comes out, and it's just overly produced. You have this certain quality that comes along with your music that is organic and just something very special. So anybody that's watching this, anybody who's, wants to try to create something, please connect with Innovaniac Music before it's not so possible.
Man, thank you, Jonathan. It's really honestly, it's really too kind of you. And I do appreciate it. It's kind of like your coffee mug, man. A couple little spots of coffee on the outside of it. Some people will be tempted to clean those off, but no, man. I think it's perfect that way. I think about music that way too. I leave a couple of little mistakes in there because that's how it got played, Well,
I'm glad we were able to go full circle with the coffee.
Absolutely.
With the coffee. I appreciate you, and I look forward to when we can chat some more. And without, I usually will ask her to take us away, but she's not here today. She's with the kids. So Kevin, take us away. Have a good night.
Cheers, buddy. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for listening. Have a good night.
All right. Take care.